Thoughts on the Gita. The book known as the Gita forms a part of the Mahabharata. To understand the Gita properly, it is very important to know several things. First, whether it formed a part of a Mahabharata, that is, whether the authorship attributed to Veda Vyasa was true, or if it was merely interpolated within the great epic. Secondly, whether there was any historical personality of the name of Krishna. Thirdly, whether the great war of Kurukshetra, as mentioned in the Gita, actually took place. And fourthly, whether Arjuna and others were real historical persons. Now, in the first place, let us see what grounds there are for such inquiry. We know that there were many who went by the name of Veda Vyasa, and among them who was the real author of the Gita. The Badarayana Vyasa or Dhyapayana Vyasa was only a title. Anyone who composed a new Purana was known by the name of Vyasa, like the word Vikramaditya, which was also a general name. Another point is the book Gita had not been much known to be generosity of people. Before, Shankarancharya made it famous by writing his great commentary on it. Long before that, there was current. According to many, the complimentary on it by both Yana. If this could be proved, it would go for a long way, no doubt, to establish the antiquity of the Gita, the authorship of Vyasa. But the Bodhayana Vyasa on the Vedanta Sutra, from which Ramanuja compiled his Sri Bhashya, which Shankaracharya mentioned and even quotes in part here, and there is own commentary on which was so greatly discussed by the Swami Dayananda. Not a copy even of that Bodhyana Bhashya could I find while traveling throughout India. It is said that even Ramanuja compiled his Bhashya from a own eaten manuscript, which he happened to find. When even this great Bodhayana Bhashya on the Vedanta Sutra is so much enshrouded in the darkness of uncertainty. It is simply used less to try establish the existence of the Bodhayana Bhashya on the Gita. Some infer that Shankaracharya was the author of the Gita, and that it was who foisted it into the body of the Mahabharata. Then, as to the second point in question, much doubt existed about the personality of Krishna. In one place in the Ganchonchya Upanishad, we find mention of Krishna, the son of Devaki, who received spiritual instruction from one Gora, a yogi. In the Mahabharata, Krishna is the king of Dwaraka, and in the Vishnu Purana, we find a description of Krishna playing with the gopis. Again, in the Bhagavata, the account of his Rasa Leela is detailed at length. In very ancient times in our country, there was an oak of Utshava, that is festival, called Madanochava, celebration in honor of Cupid. That very thing was transformed into Dola and thrust upon the shoulders of Krishna, who can be so bold as to assert that the Rasalila and other things connected with him were not similarly fastened upon him. In ancient times, there was very little tendency in our country to find out truth by historical research. So anyone could say what he thought best without substantiating it with proper fact and evidence. Another thing, in those ancient times, there was very little hankering after name and fame in men. So it often happened that one man composed a book and made it pass current in the name of his guru or of someone else. In such cases, it is very hazardous for the investigator of historical fact to get at the truth. In ancient times, they had no knowledge whatever of geography, imagination ran riot, and so we meet with such fantastic creations of the brain as sweet ocean, milk ocean, clarified butter ocean, curd ocean, etc. In the Puranas, we find one living 10,000 years, another 100,000 years. But the Vedas say man lives 100 years. Whom shall we follow here? So, to reach a correct conclusion in the case of Krishna is well nigh impossible. It is human nature to build round the real character of the great man all sorts of imaginary, superhuman attributes. As regards Krishna, the same must have happened, but it seems quite probable that he was a king. Quite probable, I say, because in ancient times in our country it was chiefly the kings who exerted themselves most in the preaching of Brahmajana. Another point to be especially noted here is that whoever might have been the author of the Gita, we find its teaching the same as those in the whole of the Mahabharata. From this, we can safely infer that in the age of the Mahabharata, some great man arose and preached the Brahmajana in this new grab to the then existing society. Another fact comes to the fore that in the olden days, as one sect after another arose, there also came into existence and use among them one new scriptures or another. It happened too that in the lapse of time, both the sect and its scripture died out, or the sect ceased to exist but its scriptures remained. Similarly, it was quite probable that the Gita was the scripture of such a sect, which had embodied high and noble ideas in this scared book. Now, to the third point, bearing on the subject of the Kurukshetra war, no special evidence in support of it can be adduced. But there is no doubt that there was a war fought between Kurush and Panchalas. Another thing, how could there be so much discussion about jhana, bhakti, and yoga on the battlefield, where the huge army stood in battle array, ready to fight, just waiting for the last signal? And was any shorthand writer present there to note down every word spoken between Krishna and Arjuna in the din and turmoil of the battlefield? According to some, this Kurukshetra war is only an allegory. When we sum up its historic significance, it means the war which is constantly going on within man between the tendencies, or good and evil. This meaning too may not be irrational. About the fourth point, there is enough ground of about as regard the historicity of Arjuna and others. And it is this Saptapatha Brahmana is a very ancient book. In it are mentioned somewhere all the names of those who were performers of the Ashwamedha Yajna. But in those places there is not only no mention, but no hint even of the names of Arjuna and others. Though it speaks of Janamejaya, the son of Parishit, who was the grandson of Arjuna, yet in the Mahabharata and other books, it is stated that Yudhishthira, Arjuna, and others celebrated the Ashwamedha sacrifice. One thing should be especially remembered here, that there is no connection between these historical research and our real aim, which is the knowledge that leads to the acquirement of Dharma. Even if the historicity of the whole thing is proved to be absolutely false today, it will not in the least be any loss to us. Then, what is the use of so much historical research? You may ask. It has its use because we have to get at the truth. It will not do for us to remain bound by wrong ideas, born of ignorance. In this country, think very little of the importance of such inquiries. Many of the sects believe that in order to preach a God thing which may be beneficial to many, there is no harm in telling an untruth. If that helps such preaching, or in other words, the end justifies the means. Hence, we find many of our tantras beginning with Mahadeva said to Parvati, but our duty should be to convince ourselves of the truth, to believe in truth only. Such is the power of superstitions of faith in old traditions, without inquiry into its truth. That is keeps men bound hand and foot so much. So even Jesus the Christ, Muhammad and other great men believed in many superstitious activities or faith in old tradition, bound hand and foot, could not shake them off. You have to keep your eyes always fixed on truth only and shun all superstition completely. Now it is for us to see what there is in the Gita. If we study the Upanishad, we notice in wandering through the maze of many irrelevant subjects, the sudden introduction of the discussion of a great two, just as in the midst of the huge wilderness, a traveler unexpectedly comes across Herrick, and there are an exquisitely beautiful rose with its leaves, thorns, roots all entangled. Compared with that, Gita is like these two beautifully, arranged together in their proper places, like a fine garland or a bouquet of the choicest flowers. The Upanishads deal elaborately with Shraddha, that is faith, in many places, but hardly mention Bhakti. In the Gita, on the other hand, the subject of Bhakti is not only again and again dealt with, but in it the innate spirit of Bhakti has attained its culmination. Now let us see some of the main points discussed in the Gita. Wherein lies the originality of the Gita, which distinguishes it from all preceding scriptures. It is this, though before its advent, yoga, jnana, bhakti, etc., had each its strong adherents. They all quarrelled among themselves, each claiming superiority for his own chosen path. No one ever tried to seek for reconciliation. Among these different paths, it was author of the Gita who for the first time tried to harmonize these. He took the best from what all the sects then existing had to offer and threatened them in the Gita. But even where Krishna failed to show a complete reconciliation among these varying sects, it was fully accomplished by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in his 19th century. Take a break for 5 minutes. The audio will continue. The next is Nishkama Karma, or work with our desire or attachment. People nowadays understand what is meant by this in various ways. Some say what is implied by being unattached is to become purposeless. If that were its real meaning, then heartless brutes and the walls would be the best exponents of the performance of Nishkama Karna. Many others again gave the example of Janaka and wished themselves to be equally recognized as past masters in the practice of Nishkama Karma. Janaka did not acquire that distinction by bringing forth child, but these people all want to be Janakas, with the sole qualification of being the fathers of the brood of children. No, the true Nishkama Karmi, performer of work without desire, is neither to be like a brute, nor to be inert, nor heartless. He is not tamashika, but of pure sattva. His heart is so full of love and sympathy that he can embrace the whole world with his love. The world at large cannot generally comprehend his all embracing love and sympathy. To him who was thus overwhelmed with pity and sorrow, and whose eyes were dimmed with tears, Madhusudana spoke these lines. The blessed Lord said, in fact, a straight whence comes upon the O Arjuna this dejection and aya like disgraceful and contrary to the attainment of heaven. Yield not to unmanliness, O son of Preeta, ill doth it become the cast off this mean faint heartedness and arise, O scorcher of thine enemies. In the showcase beginning with how potentially, how beautifully has Arjuna real position been painted, then Sri Krishna advised Arjuna, why is guarding Arjuna to fight? Because it was not that the disclination of Arjuna to fight arose out of overwhelming predominance of pure sattva guna. It was all tamas that brought on this unwillingness. The nature of a man of sattva guna is that he is equally calm in all situations in life, whether it be prosperity or adversity. But Arjuna was afraid. He was overwhelmed with pity that he had the instinct and inclination to fight, is proved by the simple fact that he can be to the battlefield with no other purpose than that. Frequently in our life, also such things are seen to happen. Many people think they are sattvika by nature, but they are really nothing but tamashika. Many living in an uncleanly way regard themselves as Paramahamsa. Why? Because Shastras say that Paramahamsas live like one inert, or mad, or like an unclean spirit. Paramahamsas are compared to children, but here it should be understood that the comparison is one sided. The Paramahamsa and the child are not only and non different, they only appear similar, being the two extreme poles as it were. One had reached to the state beyond jhana, and other has not even an inkling of jnana. The quickest and the lowest vibrations of light are both beyond the range of our ordinary vision, but in the one it is instant heat, and in the other it may be said to be almost without any heat. So it is with the opposite qualities of sattva and tamas. They seem in some respect no doubt to be same, but there is a world of difference between them. The tamoguna loves very much to array itself in the garb of the sattva. Here in Arjuna, the mighty warrior, it has come under the daya, that is pity. In order to remove this delusion which had overtaken Arjuna, What did the Bhagwan say? As I always preach that you should not decry a man by calling him a sinner, but that you should draw his attention to the omnipotent power that is in him. In the same way does the Bhagwan speak to Arjuna. It doth not befit thou art that Atman imperishable beyond all evil. Having forgotten thy real nature, thou hast by thinking thyself a sinner, as one afflicted with bodily evils and mental grief. Thou hast made thyself, so this doth not befit thou. So says the Bhagavan, yield not to unmanliness, O son of Preeta. Yield not to be unmanliness. There is in the world neither sin nor misery, neither disease nor grief. If there is anything in the world which can be called sin, it is this fear. Know that any work which brings out the latent power in the is punya, and that which makes thy body and mind weak is verily sin. Shake off this faint heartedness, thou art a hero of Vira. This is unbecoming of the. This you, my son, can proclaim this message to the world. Then all this disease, grief, sin, sorrow will vanish from off the face of the earth in 3 days. All these ideas of weakness will be nowhere. Now it is very where this current of the vibration of fear. Reverse the current, bring in the opposite vibration, and behold the magnetic magic transformation. Thou art omnipotent, so go to the mouth of cannon. Fear not. Hate not the most abject sinner. Look not to his exterior. Turn the gaze inward, where resides the Paramatma, that is Supreme Self. Proclaim to the whole world with a trumpet voice. There is no sin in thee. There is no misery in thee. Thou art the reservoir of omnipotent power. Arise, awake, and manifest the divinity within. If one reads this one sloha, one gets all the merits of reading the entire Gita. For in this one sloka lies embedded the whole message of the Gita. If there is anything in the Gita that I like, it is these two verses coming out strong as the very kissed. Just search what that two lines. The very essence of Krishna's teaching, he who sees the Supreme Lord dwelling alike in all beings, the imperishable in things that perish he sees indeed. For seeing the Lord as the same everywhere present, he does not destroy the self by the self, and thus he goes to the highest goal. Krishna, the Lord of Soul, talked to Arjuna, the Lord of Sleep, the field of virtue in this world. The five brothers, presenting right ears, first the 100 other brothers, all that have we love, and five other brothers fight the 100, the most heroic brother. Arjuna, awakened soul, is the general. We have to fight all sense delights, the things to which we are most attached, to kill them. We have to stand alone. We are Brahman. All other ideas must be merged in this one. Krishna did everything, but without any attachment, he was in the world, but not of it. Do all work, but without attachment. The work for the work's sake, never for yourself. The teaching of Krishna, as taught by the Gita, the grandest the world has ever known. He who wrote that wonderful poem was one of those rare souls whose life sent a wave of regeneration through the world. The human race will never again see such a brain as his who wrote the Gita. This great poem is held to be crown jewel of all Indian literature. It is a kind of commentary on the Vedas. It shows us that our battle for spirituality must be fought out in this life. So we must not flee from it, but rather compel it to give us all that is whole. As the Gita typifies this struggle for higher things, it is highly poetical to lay the scene in the battlefield. Krishna, in the guise of the charioteer, to Arjuna, leader of one of the opposing armies, urges him not to be sorrowful, not to fear death, since he knows he is immortal, that nothing which changes can be in the real nature of man. Through chapter after chapter, Krishna teaches the higher truth of philosophy and religion to Arjuna. It is these teachings which make this poem so wonderful. Practically, the whole of the Vedanta philosophy is included in them. Take a break for 5 minutes. The video will continue. Wisdom can be practiced even on a battlefield. The Gita was preached so. There are three states of mind: the active, the passive, and the serene. The passive state is characterized by slow vibrations, the active by quick vibration, and the serene by the most intense vibrations of all. Know that the soul is sitting in the chariot. The body is the chariot, the outer sense are the horses, and the mind the reins, and the intellect the charioteer. So man crosses the ocean of Maya. He goes beyond. He reaches God. When a man is under the control of his senses, he is of this world. When he can control the sense, he has renounced. Even forgiveness, if weak and passive, is not true. Fight is better. Forgive when you could, being lessons of angel to the victory. Krishna, the charioteer of Arjuna, hears him say, "Let us forgive our enemies," and answers, "You speak the words of wise men, but you are not a wise man, but a coward. As a lotus leaf living in the water, yet untouched by it, so should the soul be in the world. This is battlefield. Fight your way out. Life in this world is an attempt to seek God. Make your life a manifestation of will strengthened by renunciation." Next, the preaching of Krishna. Almost the same circumstance which gave birth to Buddhism in India surrounded the rise of Krishna. Not only this, the events of that day we find happening in our own times. There is a certain idol. At the same time, there must always be a large majority of the human race who cannot come up to the ideal, not even intellectually. The strong ones carry it out and many times have no sympathy for the weak. The weak to the strong are only beggars. The strong ones march ahead. Of course, we see at once that the highest position to take is to be sympathetic and helpful to those who are weak. But then, in many cases, the philosopher bar the way to our being sympathetic. If we go by the theory that the whole of this infinite life has to be determined by the viewer's existence here, and now then it is very hopeless for us, and we have no time to look back upon those who are weak. But if these are not the condition, if the world is only one of the many schools through which we have to pass, if the eternal life is to be molded and fashioned and guided by the eternal law, the eternal chances await everyone, then we need to be in hurry. We have time to sympathize, to look around, sketch out a helping hand to the weak, and bring them up. With Buddhism, we have two words in Sanskrit. One is translated religion, the other a sect. This is SECT. It is the most curious fact that the disciples and descendants of Krishna have no name for their religion. Foreigners call it Hinduism or Brahmanism. There is one religion and there are many sects. The moment you give it a name, individualize it, and separate it from the rest, it is a sect, no more a religion. A sect its own truth and declares that there is no truth anywhere else. Religion believes that there has been and still is one religion in the world. There never were two religions. It is the same religion presenting different aspects in different places. The task is to conceive the proper understanding of the goal and scope of humanity. This was the great work of Krishna, to clear our eyes and makes us look with a broader vision. Follow the thoughts of Krishna. I hope this information is really useful for you to know what is the thought of Gita. The video is just for listening. Whether a video is interesting, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe our channel. You want the rest of the story? Please text me in the comment. I will definitely speak those words for you, and I'm eagerly waiting for your comments. Once again, thank you for watching this video. Just see this video for your relaxation if you want. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.